I heard about the gravity chamber on my first morning at the Crucible. The station AI gave me the tour. Dormitories on level 4, weapons range on level 6, medical bay on level 3, and then the chamber on level 1, right at the bottom of the station, like something the builders had wanted to keep as far from the living quarters as possible. The junior adjutant walking beside me was a Sekali, thin and quick-moving with pale gold eyes, and he recited the chamber's history the way a tour guide recites facts about a famous building, with the particular pride of someone who has never personally gone inside it. No warrior had survived a full 30-minute session. That was the fact he saved for last. He said it the way people say things they expect to produce a reaction. I looked at the brass plate mounted beside the sealed door, names and species and session times, etched in small careful letters. The longest session was 11 minutes. That record belonged to a Vrath warlord named Keth Aran, who had reportedly laughed through the first 8 minutes before his left femur cracked. I read the plate slowly, top to bottom. The adjutant watched my face. I asked him about the field gradient, specifically whether the ramp was linear or stepped. He blinked his pale eyes and said he did not know. He had clearly never been asked that before. I thanked him, and we moved on. What I did not tell him was that I grew up on Kepler 62e, a colony world with a surface gravity of 1.4 times Earth standard. I did not tell him because it did not seem relevant at the time. I had lived my whole life slightly heavier than most humans, and 6 years after I finished school, I went to work in the deep ore shafts, where the pressure equipment added another half unit of resistance to every shift. I worked 10-hour shifts in that weight for 6 years. My mother worked 30 years in those shafts, and never once mentioned the gravity, because in our family, the gravity was simply the weather, a permanent condition you dressed for and moved through and stopped thinking about. I thought about that brass plate on the wall. The smallest number on it was 2.8 units. I had eaten breakfast at 2.8 units every morning for 6 years. I filed this information away and went to dinner. The elite bunk room held 6 people that cycle. I arrived last, which meant 5 sets of eyes turned toward the door when I walked in with my bag. Commander Vrethade was the first one I noticed, because he was unavoidable. A Vrath, 7 feet tall, built from a species that had spent its evolutionary history as the largest predator on a medium-gravity world. He had 4 thick arms, 2 of which were currently folded across his chest, and eyes the color of old copper. He looked at me the way experienced soldiers look at recruits they have already assessed and dismissed, not with cruelty, just with efficiency. He had made a calculation. The calculation did not favor me. Sek the Second was a Sekagali, like the adjutant, but older, and far less polite. She was recording something on a small device when I walked in, and she paused the recording long enough to look at me, and then returned to it, which I understood to mean I was not worth a full pause. The other 3 were Duvari and Helen species, names I learned later. They were more neutral, not friendly, but neutral, which I appreciated. Vreth told me, that first evening, that I should consider requesting a transfer to a basic training tier. He said it without heat. He was not trying to wound me. He was, in his mind, giving me genuinely useful advice. Humans were new to the Accord. Humans were small-boned by Vrath standards, modest in size, limited in documented combat history. The elite tier was where warriors came after years of decorated service. I had 4 years of mine shaft safety certification and a recent combat qualification test that I had passed by the minimum required margin. I told him I would think about it. He accepted this with a nod and returned to his pre-sleep maintenance routine, which involved treating each of his 4 arms with a conditioning compound. I unpacked my bag, ate my ration pack, and went to sleep. I did not request a transfer. 2 days later, a junior cadet from the basic tier tried the gravity chamber on a dare. I heard about it at breakfast. Apparently the dare had involved a significant amount of a Sekali fermented beverage, and the cadet had marched up to the chamber booking station and entered his name with great confidence at 11 o'clock in the evening. He lasted 4 minutes at 3 units of gravity before his vision went, and he was carried out by the medical team. He was not seriously hurt. The next morning he was sitting in the mess hall looking at his food without eating it. Vreth clapped the cadet on the shoulder as he passed, and said something in Vrath that the translation unit rendered as, "Good effort, young one." It was genuinely kind. The commander was not a cruel being. He simply operated on a set of assumptions about the universe that seemed, to him, well confirmed by evidence. I booked my first chamber session that afternoon. 30 minutes, the following morning, standard ramp from 1 unit to the machine's operational maximum. I saw Vretho check the booking roster that evening. I watched him read my name. He did not say anything. But before lights out, I heard him say something quietly to Sek, and I heard Sek reply, and though I could not make out the words through the bunk divider, I recognized the tone. It was the tone people use when they have decided to watch something they expect to go badly. The morning of the session was ordinary in every way. I ate a medium breakfast, not too heavy, not too light, and drank 2 cups of water. I wore my standard training suit. I took the lift down to level 1 alone. The chamber door was open, waiting for me. It was a sphere about 12 meters across, walls of brushed gray metal, a single overhead light, and a pressure readout panel built into the wall at eye level. The floor was flat and bare. There was nothing to hold on to and nothing to sit on. This was deliberate. The chamber was not designed for comfort. It was designed to test a single question. How much can you carry before you fall? I walked in. The door sealed behind me. The light overhead hummed once. Steady. The field generators in the walls started their cycle. 1 unit of gravity. Exactly what I had woken up to every morning of my life on Kepler 62e. I rolled my shoulders. The air was cool and slightly recycled tasting. I started walking a slow circuit around the perimeter. 2 units. I felt it in my knees, the way I used to feel the end of a long shift, a familiar settling of weight through the lower body. My breathing adjusted automatically, the way breathing adjusts when you carry something heavy. I kept walking. Through the observation glass set into the far wall, I could see the gallery. It was not full yet. Vretha was there, arms folded. 3 units. This was where the brass plate began. This was the weight that had ended most of the recorded sessions. I could feel the pressure across my shoulders, feel my spine compressing slightly, feel my cardiovascular system pushing harder to move blood through the body against the increased pull. These were familiar sensations. I had spent 6 years feeling them every morning, when I put on my shift suit and descended into the lower shafts. My body had spent 6 years responding to them by growing denser, by building more efficient pathways, by learning, the way all living things learn when the lesson is repeated enough times, that this was simply the condition of the day. I started doing lunges. It was not a dramatic choice. My legs were the most important part of the body to keep warm at high gravity, and lunges were efficient. I moved through them slowly, keeping my form clean, counting in my head. Through the observation glass, the gallery had gone quiet. At 4 units, I let my mind go to the place it always went during hard physical work, not away from the work, but through it, like water finding the path between rocks. I thought about my mother. She had the same dense frame I had, the same unhurried way of moving that people from heavy gravity worlds develop, a kind of deliberate economy of motion where nothing is wasted, because waste, in high gravity, costs you. She had worked the shafts from the time she was 20 until she was 53, and I could not remember a single morning when she had complained about being tired. Not because she was not tired, she was always tired, but because tiredness was not a crisis, it was a material. You worked with it the same way you worked with ore. 5 units. The pressure readout ticked upward, and I felt the increase the way you feel a hill steepen under your feet, a gradual, clear change in what was being asked of you. My vision was clear. My lungs were working harder, but not badly. The harmonic from the field generators had shifted at this level, a low vibration I could feel in my back teeth. I made a mental note to ask the technicians whether that was normal. 6 units. I was in new territory now. I had trained at high simulated resistance on the colony, but not this high, not in this precise form. My bones were sending me information. Not alarm, but data. Left knee, slight pressure on the lateral side, suggesting an adjustment in stance. Shoulders, the angle of load bearing needed to move slightly forward. I listened to this information the way I used to listen to the sounds of the ore shaft, not with fear, but with attention. The body knows things before the mind does. The trick is not to argue with it. I adjusted my stance. The information from my bones quieted. I kept walking. At 6 units and 19 minutes, the observation gallery was full. 7 units. I did 10 slow push-ups. I was not performing for the gallery. I want to be clear about that. I was staying warm. In sustained high-gravity conditions, the muscles of the chest and upper back need active use to prevent the kind of stiffening that makes the final minutes of a session genuinely difficult. Push-ups were the most space-efficient way to accomplish this, in a sealed sphere with no equipment. It was a practical decision. I heard, faintly, someone in the gallery make a sound. I could not tell what kind of sound. 8 units. This was genuinely new. I had no reference point for 8 units of gravity, because no human I knew had trained in it, and the Accord medical literature on human physiology in high-gravity conditions was, I had discovered when I looked for it, essentially empty. We were too new. Nobody had thought to run the study. My body did not know 8 units, but my body knew how to learn. The left knee gave me updated information. The shoulder joint gave me updated information. My spine, compressed and load-bearing in ways it had never quite been asked to bear, gave me updated information. I processed each signal, adjusted each angle, redistributed each load. It was like the first day on a new section of the shaft, where the oar configuration is different, and you have to spend the first hour recalibrating your movements before the work becomes fluid again. By the 25th minute, at 8 units of gravity, the work had become fluid. I was slightly tired. My breathing was deliberate and controlled. My legs were burning, in the clean, honest way legs burn when they are being used properly. Somewhere in the walls, the field generators hummed their shifted harmonic, and I walked a slow, careful circuit around the perimeter of the sphere, and the readout on the wall climbed from 26 minutes to 27 to 28. At 30 minutes, the generators powered down. I walked out of the chamber, picked up my water bottle from the hook beside the door, and drank half of it. I stretched my neck to the left, then the right. The corridor was bright after the flat light of the sphere. The observation gallery had emptied into the corridor. There were more people than I had expected. Word had moved through the station faster than I realized. Faces I did not recognize. A few of the station technicians. The junior Sakali adjutant who had shown me the brass plate on my first morning, standing at the back with his pale gold eyes very wide. Vreth Ah was directly in front of me. He was completely still. For a Vrath, who were creatures of constant small motion, the rolling of a shoulder, the flex of a hand, the stillness was significant. He was looking at me with an expression I had not seen on a Vrath face before in the weeks I had known him. I recognized it after a moment, the way you recognize a word in a foreign language that you learned once and then forgot. It came back to me, because I had seen it on human faces, on the faces of people who had just encountered something that did not fit inside any category they had prepared for. He said, "What was your homeworld's gravity?" I told him, 1.4 units, standard surface. 6 years on the lower shafts after that. He was quiet for 4 seconds. I counted. I turned to the nearest technician and asked, politely, whether the chamber could be configured above 8 units, and whether longer sessions were available. The technician looked at his display panel and said the chamber could reach 10 units, but that no session above 8 had ever been run with an occupant. I said I would like to book a 90-minute session at 10 units for the following week. The technician looked at me. He did not say yes. He did not say no. He looked at me the way the adjutant had looked at me on the first morning, which was the look of a person whose categories had just run out. Behind me, I heard Sek stop her recording. I heard her say one word, quietly, in her own language. The translation unit gave me the single word rendering, human, not angry, not impressed exactly, the way you say the name of a thing when you have just confirmed what it is, and realized your previous understanding of it was wrong. I ate dinner. The mess hall was quieter than usual, and I noticed it, but I was mostly thinking about the knee, not with concern, but with professional interest. The adjustment I had made at 7 units had worked well, and I wanted to record the specifics while they were still fresh. I got out my log and wrote 3 paragraphs of technical notes. Pressure angle, stance width, breathing pattern. The kind of notes my mother would have written if she had kept a log, which she never did, because she said the body remembered what it needed to remember. I did not know that Vrethra was in his quarters filing a report. He had filed many reports in his career, threat assessments, tactical observations, notes on unusual weapons and unusual warriors. He wrote them with a veteran's precision. This one, about a human recruit at the Crucible, Cycle 7, was the shortest report he had ever filed. One word. The word was threat. He did not include an explanation. He did not think one was necessary. Anyone who read that report and knew what the chamber was, what it had done to every living thing that had ever entered it, would understand what the word meant without needing it spelled out. A variable that every threat model in the Accord had treated as settled and constant for 40 years, had, in 30 minutes that morning, been revealed as wrong. I closed my log. I finished my food. I went to bed and slept well, the way you sleep when the body has been used honestly and is satisfied with the day's work. I did not think of myself as dangerous. I never had. Danger was a category I associated with rockfall and gas leaks and equipment failure in the lower shafts. Real things that could hurt you if you were careless. I was not careless. That was all I had ever been. Not exceptional, not fearless. Just a person who had grown up in weight and learned, the way everything learns when it must, to carry it. Vretha, sitting in his quarters with his report filed and the station quiet around him, suspected that this was precisely the part nobody had thought to account for. He was right.